Franklin County Commissioners meeting, January 21st, 2020.
So the camera won't be working.
Is it on your screen? Got a clock glitch here, so it'll be a moment to see if we get it. Well, if yours is working, we can go ahead, can't we?
Soft pins will move the computer.
The what?
The pin with the soft end.
Oh,
you can use it to do a computer and a phone.
Yeah.
I didn't know
that. Okay. Good morning, everybody. We are here for our Tuesday morning, January 21 meeting. We had a time clock glitch, kept us checking in quite so soon, but with that, if you would, we have a full complement of commissioners this morning. So if you would join me with a pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I think our first item on the agenda this morning is Carly is going to.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This morning I am here on behalf of the Public Works Department to request the creation of a part-time public records clerk position. Anticipate that the hours will average about 20 hours a week to help them get caught up on some of the backlog of their records management. Not anticipating that this is a forever position, but certainly beyond the 6 months that would indicate a temporary position. Happy to answer any questions that you might have, and Mr. Mahoney's here as well if you have any more detailed questions.
I did see that this is kind of mirroring another employee of a part-time, same type of scenario.
Yeah, we do have an employee in the clerk's office that is a part-time records clerk that is working on records management up there. So the duties of this position are very similar. So it's not necessarily a new classification for the county, but it's new to Public Works.
Yeah. When I first started looking at it, I was thinking, why not marry that same person? except for the fact, then you're going to have to add in medical?
Correct.
Okay.
Medical leave benefits that we don't currently have.
Yeah. Even though they're in two different departments?
Yep, it would be total hours worked for the same employer, so they would then be a full-time Franklin County employee.
Okay.
Working in the two offices.
Okay, that was my only thought there. Commissioners?
Coming out of their budget, so no extra cost.
Either discussion or a resolution?
Mr. Chairman, move for approval of Resolution 2020-020 entitled Creation of Part-Time Records Clerk Position at Public Works.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Carmen. Our next item on the agenda is the time for public comment. Our first of two.
It's very nice to see you all. I'm sorry I wasn't able to come to the last meeting. I actually wanted to share something with you. I have been appointed to the Governor's LGBTQ Commission. It's the first commission of its kind in our state's history, and the reason I'm sharing it with you is both because I hope that I will be able to represent the values of Franklin County, but I also wanted to thank you both for the Cook rule that I will be observing where decorum is concerned because he was right, but also because in your own ways you've all actually taught me a number of lessons, and I never would have applied for a commission if not for some of the interactions I've had with each of you at these meetings and in this room. We may not always agree on politics, but you've been wonderful teachers, and I do mean that in a positive sense when it comes to service and public policy. So I just wanted to take a moment to give you your due on that. And if you want to talk about it, or if there's something relating to that that comes up that you'd like to share at some point, my ears are always open, and I do believe in Franklin County. I hope more people from our county apply for commissions and boards, regardless of political affiliation. It is a great way to serve and to make sure that our values and interests are represented. Thank you, fellas.
Okay. Morning.
Thank you again. Good morning. Last Wednesday we met with Keith Johnson. We had four of us all together. Very productive. I think we had a couple good breakthroughs at that meeting, did we not? And I thank you for that time. I wanted to do that publicly. We're going to, real quickly, in the original contract at the meeting was mentioned in line 15 that the land where we sit on, the RV park sits on, by the way, I'm in Allegheny Zone Space 30, was originally had a conditional use permit that expired in 9/30. That was misrepresented in the contract. It wasn't the conditional use permit, it was the business license, and which is told them that can be more opposing each other. And my comment was write a check. You know, that's kind of a ridiculous thing to base this on, or one of the platforms it's based this on. Secondly, we have sent you several laws. It had been passed recently, and the most recent one was House Bill Report. And we send these laws to you when I heard that you guys, you know, some of you don't even read them, don't open them, what have you. I understand that we were carpet bombing you with things. I'm not going to apologize for that. We're just trying to get as much information as we could get you in as short a time. We would encourage you to read these things because a lot of them are important, extremely important, you know, like the HUD bills, the HUD resolution, and these new things that have been passed that look past all these things that are being proposed now. And then lastly, and I will go, brought up to me when I was trying to explain to everybody the next day about what happened. And I understand you're the county, you're not the city. And you own the park, and you don't own other parks. But is every park in the city of Pasco going to be held underneath the same rule? I would imagine it would be if the county was going to if the city was going to enforce it. I understand the difference between the two. But I think I'm done at that point. But that all makes sense, does it not? I mean, you know, I just try to bring to you what the things that were conveyed to me in the manner they were conveyed, and I put a lot of thought to it before I come to you guys. But that would be something we'll take to the city council. I mean, that's the proper place, if I'm assuming. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thanks, Alan. Further comments? Seeing none, we'll go on to pay the bills, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, we have one fiscal note this morning. This is fund expenditures. Move for approval as presented in a total amount of $538,896.79. Note that this has been reviewed by the county administrator, 2 members of the auditor's office.
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That moves us on to the consent agenda. We have items 1 through 7, but item number 2 has been pulled. So we have 1 through 7 minus item 2.
Mr. Chairman, before we get to a motion for approve, I'd like to request that we pull item number 1 for separate consideration on a future date, not today. The purpose for that request, and by the way, historically we've honored requests from commissioners even if there wasn't an articulated purpose but merely a concern. But in this case, I'll share that my concern was that in the meeting with the RV residents the other night, a number of people shared with me, in fact the majority of the group, that not only was Franklin County not the most expensive option, it was sort of the midpoint, and some people said it was actually cheaper than the midpoint. Our stated policy as a board over the years has been that the last thing we want to do is compete with the private sector, and we've established, at least verbally and by consent, that it's our desire to keep the rates at the top of the scale to minimize competition. And so I'd like to have that week that we can take a look at the other parks and find out what the facts are and make sure that we're living up to our policy of minimizing competition with our tax-paying citizens.
Mr. Chairman, I've taken the liberty to check the rates with KOA, and yes, we are $100 higher than KOA. So I don't know what other parks there are, but it seems to me like we are already higher than the other parks. I didn't confer with any others other than KOA across the street, so that was my only, just curious as to what are some of the other parks in our area.
I'd be happy to respond to that. We did look primarily at KOA, as they're the only similarly situated RV park within our area. There are a couple of other mobile home parks or different types of parks that there's one up on North 4th Street that you might be aware of. They are managed more or less as mobile home parks. But so our direct competition, as it were, is really with the KOA. They offer some amenities that we do not have. For example, they have a small convenience store. I believe they have a swimming pool and a hot tub recreation.
I looked through all those, yeah.
Yeah, so they clearly have some amenities that we don't have. But having said that, we have a good relationship with their management. They know what our rates are, and we don't view ourselves as in direct competition with them. We often refer people to them if we don't have room to accommodate them on a short-term basis, but certainly recognize that if there's additional discussion that individual commissioners want to have about these rates, we're certainly open to do that.
Okay. With that, we will pull 1 and 2 this week, bring it back with more information next week. So we are down to number 3 through 7 on the consent agenda.
And, Mr. Chairman, I would move for approval of the consent items 4 through 7 and request that we pull item 3 for separate discussion.
Okay.
I second.
All right. Any further question on 4 through 7? If not, I'd ask for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Item 3.
So a couple of thoughts on this one. I understand from the read aheads, which Carly did a nice job on, as she always does. There were at least 4 other people who found themselves in the same situation as Mr. Beaton. What was unclear is what the circumstances were. And not seeing it in your email is a little different threshold than somebody has a death in the family and has to travel out of state and misses it. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened with the other 4. I don't know what happened with the other 4, but out of a sense of fairness and equity, I think we owe Mr. Beaton the same treatment that we gave the other 4 people, and that we honor the request. At the same time, I would point out that there's not much point in having a policy that you don't enforce. And I would like for the board to concur with the assessment that equity is paramount and that we treat this one like we have the others, together with an agreement that we will update the policy to stipulate that these sort of exceptions will only be held in the most extreme circumstances, and that not looking at your email or some other minor detail is not sufficient. I'll leave the language for HR to propose, but if we're not going to have some sort of a standard, then there's no point in having a policy.
Well, I see Mr. Beaton has entered the room, so I'd like to hear from him on this as far as...
So you guys are talking about the healthcare?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so, I mean, it just is what it is, right, what I said. I had 9 years of the same choices, and I got in there and missed this email. And so I guess, my thought is, one of the reasons a lot of us are all in government is that we don't particularly care for gotcha government. And this is on me, obviously, but also to try to have policies that are, I don't know, when you fade into them. So I own this. I was sent emails that weren't opened. It was a 7-day turnaround. I was out. So my idea is to try to develop a policy that helps people get to where they are while still trying to make sure you get their attention. So
Was anything different this year from previous years?
I don't believe so. For me, I guess that I'm kind of glad this happened to me in some extent, because this is one of these things where I haven't changed a thing for 9 years. It's the same form. Nothing's changed. I got in by the deadline. And heck, I was in here during the opening. And I remember there was something to do, I think, with the corrections or whatever it was. And I don't know what the status of those folks was. But I remember sitting in the back thinking, well, I'm glad I got mine done. You know what I mean? And so, I don't know. I just think I appreciate you guys taking this up.
Well, excuse me, but when you say you got it done, then how are we in this predicament?
Well, there was a form. So, I filled everything out and made my choices, and then there's a follow-up paper form. Is
that consistent with previous years?
I believe so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think, and that's why when I called downstairs, I'll tell you how far of the loop I was. I left a message for the young lady who had left the county already. Of course, her voicemail was still up, but the point was that I was completely out of it, and so, if you left it the way it was, you'd be giving me something I've never had and never wanted. So I hope that's not how.
Okay.
I can tell we already do, but I think that's in this policy. You try to find a way to. Well, let me put it this way: in elections, when you send your ballot in, we know you've tried to vote, but the signature doesn't match. We not only send you a letter, but we make a phone call. In other words, there's just this. We're trying to get to you in some manner that's different, and so maybe there's some customer service thing there that might come out of this, but this feels like a little bit of a one-off too. I'm the only one standing here, so I think you could just shame me and then be done with it. So, but I appreciate the consideration.
Well, Carly,
go ahead. There was so many different emails sent out reminding people to do this.
Yeah, there was.
Not according to this. The recap, it started in October 17th, and it went on through November 15th.
Mm-hmm.
Numerous different emails that are reminders.
Right. So what that was is a reminder to engage during open enrollment, which I did. So then, depending on your choices in open enrollment, then there is, additional reminders.
And this is different this year than last?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
So I'm still having a hard time understanding what the glitch was in your eyes.
It was me. So make sure that's what I want you to understand. It was that. So I get done, and then I left, I traveled for the next 2 weeks. So I filled this out on Thursday. I think you had 7 days to turn the form in, and there was an email on that. And then the next email that came out for that special opening, I think, was during the Thanksgiving week when I was out again, and you only had a certain time period for that. So look, HR is in the customer service business. I'm sure she knows how to figure out, how to do this, and so that's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
And I agree with Commissioner Peck that what I think we need to do here is just set we've made 4 exceptions already, and to not grant Beaton an exception would be singling him out. So I would say anybody that misses the deadline from here on out misses it. We're all grown-ups. But we can't single, I think, one person out when we allow the other 4 an exception this year. And that's as simple as that. We have a deadline. The deadline's not met. You're out. That's it.
Commissioner, I don't necessarily disagree with the sentiment behind that. There may be extenuating circumstances for an individual to miss if they're out sick, some other reason. That's why we've always kind of allowed the safety valve of them coming to the board for a decision. That's a decision that the staff has not been willing to make on their own, of saying yes for you and no for you. But if that's the will and direction of the board, we'll certainly enforce that policy if that's. But we've always kind of made it available to.
My initial comments were that we need to update the language of the policy to stipulate that exceptions only be made in extraordinary circumstances, and we can give examples of what extraordinary circumstances mean, unlike high crimes and misdemeanors, which are not well defined. So we have some specific language to that effect, and then it can still come to the board. But if it's simply a case where someone missed it in their email, then sorry, but there are consequences to the county of having to go to the broker and the underwriters who have indicated that they'll make an exception this time, but they're not keen on doing that in the future. So I think just setting a standard in the policy, leaving the door open for the board to excuse somebody in extraordinary circumstances, but setting some sort of a threshold, which is sort of a middle position between here's the line, there are no exceptions, and recognizing that somebody may have a death in the family and be physically and emotionally distracted.
That's going to be a chore for that definition, and I think that we've already accepted one person that missed it in their email.
Well, to be clear, missing it in your email wouldn't meet the threshold of extraordinary circumstances.
We already okayed one, and the 4 people previous, I believe I remember reading, one of them did not see the email.
If I might finish my statement, I don't think that rises to the level of an extraordinary circumstance, and in updating the policy going forward, I would suggest that the language say something to the effect that only in extreme or extraordinary circumstances where a person is physically unable to be present or to carry out that responsibility, and we could cite some specific examples of death in the family, something that forces them beyond their normal control to take them out of the area. And if there's one that fits in the gray area, then send it to the board and we can make a judgment. And if our feeling is that that's extraordinary, we can approve it. And if we think that somebody just failed to do their duty, then we can disapprove it. But I suspect that when you put that kind of language in there, it'll reduce the number of these to 0, maybe 1 a year. And frankly, if somebody is in a car accident in Nebraska on their way home, is in the hospital and doesn't respond to it, we ought to make an exception.
So we have a resolution in front of you of 2020-021. Your pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Resolution 2020-021, authorizing special enrollment period for benefits for Mr. Beaton.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Keith, you're up.
Yes, Commissioners, as you know, we've had some discussions in the past about the need for rebalancing the commissioner districts for upcoming elections, and due to growth within the county and housing development and relocation of voters, we are a little bit out of balance in our current district. So I've put together initially a proposed plan. It's going to be consistent with the statute that governs redistricting. Understand that it is just a proposal at this point, and it will be subject to, obviously, your questions and review, but the public has an opportunity to come in and comment on it, to provide input as well. We will hold a public hearing next Tuesday in our meeting to review that plan. So far, all it really has attempted to do is balance the numbers around primarily District 1, which around the edges, around the city of Pasco. I recognize there may be a broader discussion to want to include altering precincts from one district to another further north. The proposal, as I said, is just to get the conversation started. It will be announced in the Tri-City Herald as well as the Franklin County Graphic and put up on our website for people to review this week and to start to provide written comments, or they can attend the meeting next week to provide verbal comments. After that hearing and the board kind of finalizes a proposed or a plan for redistricting, then it will come back for a final vote the following week. So I think it's a good step forward. It doesn't materially alter anybody's current districts, other than some on the fringe area of the eastern side of District 1. Move some of those into District 2, and then up on the northwest corner of District 1, it expands District 1, where a lot of that new growth is coming into the Broadmoor and Dent region. I don't have a map to present to you today, but because we're not, because the redistricting plan really is subject to a public hearing, I'm not ready to present anything in a public meeting, but we'll be next Tuesday. So I wanted to just give you an update on kind of where that process stood. Certainly happy to listen to your input during the next week. I'll let you take a look at what's being proposed so that you're kind of ready for next week's meeting. Probably ideally to meet with each of you individually and kind of look at that. That way, as you have questions, comments, or alterations that you want to make, we can begin to draw that map next Tuesday.
Keith, if I may, I'd like to also have you include what are the ramifications if we go through with this redistricting of the time allotted period, if our numbers are off from the census, how soon we can redistrict again, and what are the, I guess, is there a possibility that we could be fined if we're out of compliance? If we do this and there's a 6-month waiting period to do it again and we're out, are we going to get fined? Is there any ramifications from the state?
No, there's not a fine process. Obviously, there could be, just like any question, a legal challenge. There's a process within the statute that after the board adopts the plan, I think there's a 15-day window that somebody could take the plan to Superior Court and have it challenged, but they've got to have a legal basis for doing that. We will not receive census numbers anytime soon. The census doesn't even start until later this year. It takes some time for them to collect that data. We are generally restricted to not redistricting more often than every 4 years. So I don't expect that will the census data will require us to make a change. But within the instructions or the data that we receive from the census, we'll be able to determine if we are out of compliance and need to look at it again that soon, or if this builds in enough anticipation of growth that we'll.
Do you object to each of us, if we so choose, as to put a map together also to present?
I don't object to that. I think in terms of simplicity, it kind of helps to start from a common framework, but yeah, I think each commissioner is going to have a little bit of a different viewpoint of what should happen. Obviously, there are legal restrictions about making sure that this does not violate the Voting Rights Act, that it doesn't isolate particular groups of protected voters, that the geographic boundaries are consistent and kind of follow natural lines as much as possible. You know the rules. I don't know that I need to remind you, but for the public's benefit, there are some careful legal restrictions or requirements that we have to meet in order to be able to justify it.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything further? Keith?
No, I don't believe so today.
Okay.
Oh, I will have a need for an executive session, though.
Oh, okay. With that, it's our second and final time for public comment.
I didn't say my name earlier, Jeff Robinson, resident of District 1. I just wanted to really quickly, around redistricting, there's a court case coming out of Yakima. The Yakima County Commission just had a lawsuit filed against them under the Voting Rights Act between that case and the one concerning Spokane County and whether or not the state can actually force us to a district-based system. I think we would get answers to those questions. I don't know if you already knew that. I just found out about it myself, but I would be derelict in my responsibility as the chair of the Franklin County Democrats if I didn't make you aware of it for your own purposes and study.
Well, Jeffrey, on that, they've been filed, correct?
It looks like it has, yes.
When are they going to be heard in court?
That I don't know. I only found out about it yesterday myself, so I can definitely touch base with you offline if you'd like, and I will be looking into it.
Well, my question is, then what can we look for direction if there hasn't been a decision made? I mean, these are all up in the air.
The Supreme Court case is going to probably be decided before this year is out. So
Okay, that's what I'm
it would
saying.
probably answer your questions about next year. The Yakima case, though, is one that I will be watching with great interest because regardless of what the state Supreme Court says, it looks like the Yakima case is bringing up some different issues than what was in the Spokane County case. So if the local courts rule that way in Yakima, it would give us some indication of what to expect, I think, as we discuss this for the future.
So you're saying maybe that we should just hold off then until this is decided?
No, I think that you need to protect yourselves from liability because I'm telling you now, if you don't do this now, there is going to be some kind of response. I just don't know what it's going to be, whether it's going to be a lawsuit, and I think Commissioner Peck actually has made a good point about this. We need to cover ourselves. And this is not a partisan thing. This is a bipartisan. We need to cover ourselves.
Again, we're running in fear because there hasn't been any decisions made. We don't need to be ruled with fear. We just need to have accurate decisions. And
is it fear or is it experience if you know that the court is going to do something and we have one? But I'm going to go sit down because that's breaking the quick rule.
Yeah.
Thank you. Further comments? Seeing none, I understand Keith would like an exec session for
15 minutes?
15?
Yes.
And what's it covering?
I would like to request an executive session under RCW 42.30.110, paragraph 1, subparagraph I, to discuss with legal counsel matters relating to litigation or potential litigation. Would ask that the board, the clerk, myself, the prosecuting attorney, and chief civil deputy be allowed to participate in that discussion.
Okay. Do you expect a decision? Just for the audience.
A possibility of action.
Possibility of action.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you can stick around or not, it's up to you. We are back in session from our executive session, but we need an additional 10 minutes to finish up our subject. So we'll go back into exec. All right, we are out of our final executive session with no decisions made. So, Keith, do you have anything else for us today?
I do not.
Okay. Commissioners? I have one item. I got, as a chairman, I got Census Bureau sent a letter and a CD. Just they want to confirm our boundaries as they have them. So I want to send this up to Michael and have him GIS look at it and make sure that Census Bureau's got what we include.
Make sure their information's accurate. Yep.
Those are the county boundaries? Okay.
Yeah, it's just Franklin County only, and it's basically just review this disc and sign off that it's consistent. So,
But we're not going to do that because if we're changing boundaries, we can't.
it's not a boundary problem. We're not changing a county boundary.
Oh, the county boundary. Okay, excuse me, Commissioner Fowler. Gotcha. Okay.
Snake River and the Columbia River are pretty easy to determine. It's going to be
Pretty
that
distinct lines there.
that north line on the county that follows some.
Straight too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And nobody down here knows where that is anyway, so.
They do. You ought to try flying it sometime.
Yeah.
You have to double back to get realigned.
So with that, if there's nothing else for the good of the board, we are adjourned. Thank you.